So tonight's build is going to be about making myself a little trailer for the garden tractor that I just fixed up. I picked up some supplies. I got the pieces that I need for my axle shafts, bearings. Now normally your bearings would be on your wheels, but I found these a couple years ago at a pawn shop, and I believe they were on some kind of self-propelled piece of equipment. I got them for a pretty good price, so we're going to use those because it's what I have. So instead of the bearings riding on the wheels, they're going to be riding on this right here, which is going to be the center section of the trailer. I already got my pieces cut up, just using some 1.5" by I think 16 gauge steel. Kind of mapped it out, figured out what I wanted, and we're gonna get started. I'm gonna check back with you guys here in a little bit after I get it all tacked up. Okay, we've made some progress here. We've got one side completely tacked up. I got the bottom frame all done, and then over here I need to cut another piece. That's what you get for planning it out in your head. It's coming together. Like always, whenever I'm welding, it's not accurate by tape measure, but it looks right by eyeball. So just kind of balance the two out and call it good. She's all tacked up. Got my little spreader beam. Make sure she's all squared. It looks pretty good. So the next step is I'm going to go ahead and fully weld this guy in. Hopefully with minimum warpage, but we'll just see how it happens. Okay, my box is all welded up. Tonight wasn't the greatest night for my weld skills, but it got the job done, and the ones that you're going to be able to see, they look pretty good. Next up, I'm working on doing the trailer frame itself. I have the cross member that's going to be kind of like my sub-axle, if you will, all laid out. I did my center line, and then I did my 2 lines here for, don't pay attention to that line. Then my 2 lines here for where I'm going to do my pillow block bearings. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to weld these bolts that I got. They were a little bit too long, so I cut them down, and I'm just going to go ahead and weld them up against the stock here. And then after that, I'll just put my pillow block there and tighten my bolt down. So it should look pretty good. I got my tires set up. My axle shafts are in. I went ahead and drilled my hole. So I got these guys set up to where, you know, they're not going to be moving on the axle because they are part of the axle. But I do have some collars that I'm going to put on the end and outside of these pillow block bearings. So we're going to see how this turns out. In my head it works, but we're going to find out here in a little bit. We have them all tacked in now. So here comes the moment of truth. Let's try how this guy's going to look. Oh yeah, it's going to look good. It's going to be a little bit of play, you know, in case my bolts weren't straight. And these pillow block bearings are self-aligning. They actually rotate in their housing. Even if I didn't get it straight, she'll be good. It's all welded up. The only thing I'll have left is I'll need to make a little hitch right here for the garden tractor, but that won't be too big a deal. I'll go scrounge something up and get it done. But it is welded. Still not my greatest work, but it's going to do. I'm pretty sure it's going to hold. It's square, at least square enough for a garden tractor. I think I'm going to go ahead and bolt on the pillow block bearings here in a minute, right after I get that piece done, because I'm going to have to do some drilling. So now we're going to be working on the hitch that I'm going to be putting on the tongue there. I went ahead and just stuck 2 plates together, welded them up. This is 4-inch wide flat stock, 3/16 inch thick, and I ended up drilling the hole with the these Harbor Freight dimming bits. This is actually a 3/4 bit. I'm going to go ahead and clean them up. We'll get them tacked on to where we want them. I'm kind of thinking about right there. So we got our hitch tacked on. I went ahead and used a spare piece of 3/4 inch round stock because that's what size hole I drilled in there. And I used the C-clamp to kind of hold in place. Got it all lined up. Here is where we're at for the hinge mechanism. I went ahead and put the body on top of the trailer frame, and I then took some little pieces of angle iron and got them tacked in so far. Got the holes drilled. I went ahead and I centered up. Here's my center line for the body, and then here's my center line on the frame, and I'm pretty sure you can see that. I have 2 more pieces of these angle iron that I'm going to go ahead and tack weld up on top here. After that, I'll get my holes lined up and I'll drill the second set, and then we're going to get going here. We're going to test it out. It's sitting up a little bit higher than I was really thinking it needed to, but that's just kind of how it turned out. It's all tacked in. I'm using some really long bolts for the reason of I'm going to go ahead and bottom out that nut onto the bolt. That way it doesn't clamp down, doesn't try to cause it to tighten up to where it keeps it from rotating freely. And the gap, I really didn't think it was going to be that big of a gap, but that's kind of how it turns out when you're eyeballing it. But I think I can probably weasel in some washers in there to kind of help out with the spacing. I'm going to go ahead and take it back apart. I only have it light tacked up there, but we're going to go ahead and put some nice solid tacks up here. It'll make it look real nice. It'll be pretty beefy for, this is only 16 gauge steel, but I think it's going to hold fine. And then we can finally get around to putting the wheels on. I'm kind of excited about that. I've been wanting to do it for a while, but I knew I was just going to have to take them back apart. So I was having a really tough time with these axle shafts of mine. They were not fitting in anything. You saw that the collar was barely fitting on. I had to end up sanding and grinding and trying to do everything I could to get to slide on, and that eventually went on, but it would not go into the pillow block bearing at all, as you saw. So I went in the back and I saw that I had some other 3/4 inch round stock, and the difference between this round stock and this round stock is that this is cold rolled and this guy is hot rolled. Now you can kind of see the difference in the texture of the steel. The cold rolled is very smooth, and as you can see, it slides in pretty easy. So I ended up making these 2 new axles. It's about an hour of my life I'll never get back, and I'm really kicking myself in the foot. I bought this stuff because I didn't think I had any more of this, but it turns out I have a pretty good sized stick of it still from various other projects. I think the last time I used this stuff was actually when I did my daughter's wagon. I did the axle shafts on that. So yeah, I thought I didn't have any, so I that metal supply place is only open during select times, and so I picked this stuff up at Lowe's, and it was a very bad call. But we'll just move on. We're going to get it assembled now. I think it's going to go a lot easier. And wouldn't it be that this is the part I was really looking forward to, of making it look like a trailer, and it was kicking me in the butt. So I got my pilot holes drilled. This is these pins are actually out of a ceiling fan, but I think they'll work just fine. So we're going to get it all assembled, and we're going to keep moving on. It's all together. Looks kind of like a trailer. I have the shafts out pretty wide. It's about the widest they can go. I can loosen up all the set screws and bring them in a little bit. I actually went ahead and greased the bearing. Not too much grease actually kind of came out of those, but that red stuff is what I put in. These pillow block bearings, let me see if I can move it here for you. So I have that collar, which has got the set screw, but then if you see right there, there's actually 2 more set screws on each pillow block bearing. So I probably could have gotten away with not using the collars, but I already picked them up. I had them. I decided to go ahead and use them. You know, just cheap insurance, I guess. They weren't too much either. The collars for the pack of 4, I think, were like $8. So I think it was okay to go ahead and use them. And if I ever need 2 collars, I know that they're right there on the ends. I can pull those guys off. We'll see how it does. But I got the body. I had to do just a little bit more welding because I forgot to put a center support. This is the bottom of the where the barrel is going to be sitting, and that center beam is going to be important for bolting down this barrel. This seam right here, I don't know if you can see it too well. That's what I'm going to use as my center line for bolting it down to the body of the trailer. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to get them all bolted up. I'm not completely done welding. Okay, I got it put together. I think I'm going to nickname this guy the Chariot, because that's kind of what it looks like for right now. But yeah, I think it's going to work good. Those tires, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move them in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and slide those in. Looks like it could touch the body if I slide it in too close. But we have dump. This thing is pretty cool. I like how it turned out. Got a little bit more welding. Got to figure out a latch system. Yeah, well, so that's what it would look like if it was on the ground. So that's what she looks like for right now. I went ahead and got my latch mechanism on. I had to go ahead and weld in a cross member, and then I welded a piece of angle iron to the body of the dump. And then on this cross member I went ahead and welded on these uprights for the angle iron. I then drilled a hole in them for my pin to go in. I just have a really long bolt in it right now. Sandwiched these two pieces in and then drilled them, but when I tacked them in, somehow they still ended up being crooked. As you can see, that bolt's kind of crooked on there, but if that's the worst thing that happened, then I'm going to be okay with it. Another thing I worked on was the hitch itself. I noticed that on the riding lawnmowers my hole was too far in, so I went ahead and trimmed off the sides here. The biggest update out of all this is that the barrel is attached to the dump body. Now, for anybody that's never cut up one of these plastic drums, they are a bear to wrestle around. So the easiest way for me to do this was on the outside of the barrel there is a seam that runs straight down. And these seams kind of run everywhere. And that's pretty much the marks I made whenever I was cutting this guy up. I drilled some holes in the barrel, set the barrel down, marked them down on the mid rail there, and then after I had this guy bolted down, I used C-clamps and vice grips and all sorts of crazy stuff just to get the holes drilled and everything kind of bolted up. The easiest way I found, or I can give advice to, is figure out how high up your plastic's going to go. Then once the steel was drilled, I folded this guy in and I just ran my drill in, and it got the job done. It was just kind of a one at a time thing. For the ones all the way at the front, and this is kind of poor planning on my part, I had to go ahead and weld on some more angle iron. Just some thin stuff, some stuff I had laying around. It already had holes in it, so it made it pretty easy. But I was able to go ahead and weld this stuff in, pull this guy back once again, the plastic that is, and drill him out, get it mounted. If you're wondering what I was going to do for a tailgate, I haven't decided yet. We picked up some property and my wife really needs this for just hauling around sticks. So there's really no time for a tailgate, so maybe I'll come back this winter and I'll work on a little bit more. One thing I will say is this bolt right here, these barrels get thick in some weird spots, and it just so happened that whenever I drilled this guy out, it was like the thickest part of the plastic barrel. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I just got stupid lucky because trying to unroll this guy to take a proper measurement was a real pain in the ass, but I got lucky. I'm happy with like how there's just a little gap between the top rail and the plastic. I was really afraid that I had taken my measurements completely wrong and that I was going to end up with like a barrel that was going to come like to like right here or something like that. So I think it's going to hold up well. As far as like the wasted space kind of here in the gaps, I know that once this thing starts getting weighed down with material and things like that, it'll probably stretch out. It might get a little bit smaller, but this will be a good spot like if you are traveling around with like a rake and a shovel or anything like that, you can stick those guys right through there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and try that. As far as the weight, this guy did turn out a little bit heavier than I really anticipated, but it rolls so easy. I mean, it's just so easy to move around. Here, we'll go ahead and set this guy down, and I'll pull that pin for you. Another thing is that it dumps just right. I was afraid that it was going to be really dragging on the ground, but I'm pretty happy with how it kind of sits like that. You know, it'll be, I think, a little bit better here. Let me pick up the tongue, kind of show you where the... So that's going to be pretty much like ride height with it connected to the trailer.